Mishnah Walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah Walk, with hearts like roots. We'll Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings a guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah Walk, we're all aware. A Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages we find our way. On the Mishnah Walk, every single day. Mishnah Walk, every single day. The Mishnah Walk, every single day. Mishnah Walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah Walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah Walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings a guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah Walk, we're all aware. A Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages we find our way. On the Mishnah Walk, every single day. Mishnah Walk, every single day. The Mishnah Walk, every single day. Mishnah Walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah Walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah Walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings a guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah Walk, we're all aware. A Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages we find our way. On the Mishnah Walk, every single day. Mishnah Walk, every single day. The Mishnah Walk, every single day. Mishnah Walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah Walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah Walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's free. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Key Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah walk, we're all aware. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages we find our way. On the Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, every single day. The Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah walk, with hearts like root.
שבוע טוב.
שבוע מבורך.
In light of this week's events, I'd like to do this class in honor of Charlie Kirk and his family. May his memory be for a blessing.
Amen.
Okay, I've made you the co-host, and I will be back in a moment.
Shavua tov, everyone. Let's go ahead and begin. I will share my screen and we can read the first blessing that we say before we enter our digital house of study. Odaya, are you with us? I'll go ahead and read it. Yehirasen min lefanecha Adonai Elohai. May it be your will before you, O eternal and powerful authority over me. Shelo akoshel bidvar halacha, that I shall not stumble in a matter of halacha, in a matter of the national consensus for how the people of Israel, your people, implement your Torah in a unified manner, bringing honor to your name. That I should not say regarding what is impure, that it is pure. Nor regarding what is pure, to say that it's not pure. Nor regarding what is permitted, that I might say it's forbidden. Nor regarding what is forbidden, that I might say it's permitted. And in doing so, I shall not stumble in a point of halakha, and my comrades shall rejoice with me. And they also shall not stumble in a point of halakha, in the merit of this, and I shall rejoice with them. Can ye hear also, may it be his will. Looks like Hodaya has disappeared. I'm going to go ahead and read from Sefer HaMitzvot, the summarized list of the 613 everlasting stipulations of the everlasting covenant between God and Israel. I will read the Mitzvot, the commandments regarding this upcoming holiday again. I know we read it in the last week, but we'll read it again until it arrives. Odaya, would you like to join? You busy over there?
I just got Zoom to let me unmute, so
Oh boy. All right. I know we read this last week, but we're going to read it again.
all right.
This is in the proactive commandments of the Book of Commandments, Sefer HaMitzvot, which lists the 613 in a 1 to 2 paragraph summary form. Go right ahead.
And that is that he commanded us to listen to the sound of the shofar on the first day of Tishrei. And that is his, may he be exalted, saying, and it shall be a day of blowing for you. Numbers chapter 29, verse 1. And the laws of this commandment have already been explained in Tractate Rosh Hashanah. See Parashat Pinhas, Mishnah Torah, Shofar, Sukkah, and Lulav 1. That is that he
Beautiful. Go ahead.
That is that he commanded us to give over a half shekel coin each year, and that is his, may he be blessed, saying, and a man shall give a ransom for his soul to the Lord. Exodus chapter 30, verse 12. And his saying, this they shall give every one that passes among them that are numbered, etc. Exodus chapter 30, verse 13. And the regulations of this commandment have already been explained in Tractate Shekalim, and it is explained there that this commandment is only practiced in the presence of the temple. See Parashat Ki Tisa, Mishneh Torah, Sekel Duz 1.
Shekel Duz, yeah.
Shekel Duz.
All right. Okay. Maybe let's wait a little bit for Victor to come back, unless you think he's going to take a good while. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure how long he was planning on being gone.
Well, then in that case, I think we should go ahead. Start. I apologize for my deep voice. I'm rather sleep deprived for weeks.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry to hear that.
Can you hear my? Is it noticeable? So, it is, huh? Man, that's bad.
I can hear it in your voice some.
Man,
Yeah.
I have been awake since I don't know. It was like 3 a.m.
Oh man.
Okay. And the divisions of the oral law. So these are the different major categories of Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral law. The categories of the explanation upon the written Torah. After he compiled the opinions and statements, that is, after Yehuda Hanasi, Judah, the overseer of the people of Israel, the head of the Sanhedrin of his generation, the head of the Supreme Court of Israel in his generation, after he compiled the opinions and statements of the notes and memories of the various scholars alive in his time, then he began to compose the Mishnah, which is a codified collection of all of those opinions and statements, which includes the explanations of all the commandments written in the Torah. Those basic explanations received directly from Moses, may he rest in peace. That is the first of the different types, the different categories of the oral law. Right? So that means that not all of the oral law are explanations that Jewish tradition classically teaches was received directly from Moses. Only certain key elements. It is not all of it. And that's important to point out because many traditional Jews have learned a very simplified explanation of the oral law, but one which is unacceptable to the mind of the average intellect. And that is the idea that every single word and letter in the Mishnah, many even say in the Talmud, are directly given by God to Moses, and we received it from them, and it was all orally passed along for some 3,000 years. Even the disputes, even the disagreements in the Talmud. So the Rambam Maimonides, the most influential and most widely respected rabbi after the closing of the Talmudic period, is here to tell us, no, that is not what every single detail of the oral law is. It's one of the categories. There are such explanations, oral explanations on how we do the commandments that were directly that we received directly from Moses, may he rest in peace, but that is not all of it. Second category, those conclusions concerning ramifications of given information, which were drawn, which were arrived at, by applying the interpretive systems, that is, interpretive principles, and those principles were received from Moses, but not all of their applications, which our ancient scholars arrived at from a consensus agreement on how to apply those interpretive principles. But their conclusions as scholars, with their communal consensus on how to apply them, those ramifications constitute one of the categories of the oral law. And that is specifically the category in which there were no disagreements. That is the consensus category. And number 3, those conclusions which were arrived at, which were drawn as above, but upon which there were matters of disagreement, based upon various ways of arranging or looking at the given facts to form theorems, to form hypothetical conclusions. These are recorded as disagreements using terminology such as so-and-so says this, but so-and-so says this. Even if the dissenting opinion was held by one individual against a majority, so that there was a majority opinion, but there was a dissenting opinion as well, both the individual's opinion stands and the majorities were both recorded. This was done because of extremely important principles mentioned in the Mishnah, that is part of the Mishnah. A single smallest unit of the Mishnah, parallel to what you would call a verse in a chapter. So the smallest unit of information in the book, which we call Mishnah, is itself called a Mishnah. So that's what it's referring to here with a lowercase m, mentioned in the Mishnah, Eduyot, chapter 1, the 6th Mishnah, which I will cite, but only after I discuss an important fundamental point, which ought to be dealt with first.
Orally known laws with scriptural indications uncontested. One might ask if, as we established in chapter 1, all the basic explanations of the law of the Torah were received from Moses, the general wording of the laws written in the Torah and also the particulars and details of all the laws of the entire Torah were spoken on Sinai. Torah's Kohanim, Bahar. Then what is that special class of laws designated by the term Halacha LeMoshe mi Sinai? Laws given to Moses on Sinai.
All right, this is a very good point, because throughout the Torah you find that certain kinds of laws that are discussed in the Talmud and in the Mishnah, certain unique kinds of laws are called laws given to Moses at Mount Sinai, and it's a type of oral law. So the Rambam Maimonides is making the very poignant point that if every single detail was given to Moses literally, then it makes no sense the usage of this term, but rather this usage is used for those unique, specific details of the oral law that we say are given to Moses from Mount Sinai, because nobody ever disputed them. They were never, there's no record of them having been a matter of debate. So we conclude from that that they weren't a conclusion of debate, but rather we received it directly going all the way back to Moses. Victor, ata itano, are you with us? Ata itano?
I am here.
Would you like to read the next paragraph?
Are we at the basic point?
Yes, sir.
This basic point must be fully understood. None of the explanations which were known to have originated with Moses were ever contested. Let that sink in a little bit.
And what he's saying, if you want to look at it from a more secularist or academic perspective, he is not saying that there is definitive proof that they were never contested, but
Opinions.
we just have no record of it. He's saying from the tradition as we have it and the record as we have it, these things were never contested. To speculate beyond that is just simple speculation, but we're concerned with the tradition as it actually has been preserved. So according to that tradition, there's no record of contesting, of disagreement for these specific types of halachot, these specific types of practices and laws, and that we call halacha Moshe mi Sinai, halacha given to Moses from Mount Sinai. Let's continue.
No contested by the sages and students and etc. until
Correct.
more recent times when new people, if you will, have looked at text and or applied those texts through a different filter and have contested things that should not be contested.
Yeah, we're only talking about people who are a part of the ancient chain of transmission of the oral law. The Rambam is
Right.
not talking about
I know, that's
people
me.
who, yeah,
Yeah.
such people are also just as likely to contest just about anything else. We're not really concerned about that.
Ever since Moses until the present, we have never found a dispute arising among the sages of any time or era, from the days of Moses to those of Rav Ashi, in which there would be a sage who would say that one who takes out the eye of his fellow has his eye removed, as an observance of the verse "eye replaces eye" in Deuteronomy 19:21.
So he's giving an example.
Right.
He's giving an example of an uncontested understanding of a Torah verse.
Of which others have twisted.
Ignoramuses who try to understand the Torah while completely disregarding what the people who preserved the Torah and brought it to the world actually have historically said regarding those verses. Just disregard that part and just make of it what they want. There's a term for that in modern pop lingo that some of those who are most guilty of doing this identify with pop culture and use this lingo, but they, in their hypocrisy, never realize that they are among the most guilty of it. That term is cultural appropriation. They appropriated the Torah from the people of Israel, but disrespecting both the text and the people they took it from, they claim it for themselves and twist it however they wish, removing it disingenuously from the cultural context in which it was given and from the people to whom it belongs.
And that it would be only another sage who would state that the verse merely means he is obligated to monetarily compensated for the loss. Neither have we ever found any disagreement arising over the meaning of the verse. You shall take the fruit of the glorious tree, Leviticus 23:40. To the extent that it would be the opinion of only one sage that it refers to an estrog, while another would say it means a quince, a pomegranate, or another fruit. Neither have
And
we
he's saying that has not happened, to be clear.
Right. Other fruits being mentioned just as an example when it's been established that it's the etrog.
Right. He's saying nobody in our record of tradition disagreed over this matter. We all agreed that it was a citron, in Hebrew called an etrog.
Mhm. Well, let's see. Neither have we ever found any disagreement over the fact that the bough of a thick tree means a hadass
It's a
or
myrtle.
hadat, myrtle. We have never found any disagreement over whether the words of the verse, and you shall cut her palm, Deuteronomy 25:12, are referring to a monetary compensation, and no disagreement over the fact that the edict of the verse, and if the daughter of the Kohanim man will profane herself by committing prostitution, she shall be given
Death
seraphet,
penalty by burning. And it's a
Leviticus
specific type of
21:9.
burning that you would never, it's less horrifying than what one would imagine.
It's still pretty bad.
Oh yeah, it's certainly
But
bad, but
molten.
I'm talking about to the onlookers. It's much less
Oh
horrifying.
yeah, right, for sure. Sure. People have a totally different picture in their head of what it
Yeah.
than what it really is. Um, is to be implemented only if she is a married woman in all respects. Again, on
And
the
so again,
verse,
he's saying nobody disagreed with that. There's no record of dispute and argumentation regarding that. All of the sages of Israel received that tradition and agreed with it.
and that taking place requires a court to be sitting in the
No
temple.
question. As with all death penalties, absolutely.
Mhm.
Also requires the temple to be functioning, the
Right.
priest to be serving in the temple.
Yep. Again, on the verse in Deuteronomy 22:20, decreeing Sikila for a girl,
Right? That's
Sikila.
stoning, and that also is substantially different from what people assume. Although, of
Mhm.
course, it's not pleasant. That's
No.
why you don't want to do these things that lead to it. But it only exists, as with all death penalties, with a knowledgeable, high-handed transgression, which is done in front of at least two qualified witnesses. And that's not just any random person. It's not just
Mm-mm.
any adult man, even if he's not a horrible person, right? It's people who uh, have to have fulfilled in themselves a list of qualifications to give them the status of a legitimate witness, and they have to have both given two warnings to the individual committing the violation of the covenant. And after the two warnings, the person continues to do it in front of these two qualified witnesses. So we're talking about serious, serious, high-handed rejection of the entire uh, framework and paradigm of the Torah and the people of Israel. That's essentially what you have to do in practice to receive a death penalty. It's not just, oops, I made a mistake and now off with my head. It's not just,
Right.
I'm not really sure about how to do this commandment, and I kind of disagree with what's the popular opinion. No, you have to really be suicidal to
Pretty
have this
much.
happen.
And the warning comes with knowledge of the penalty. It's
Of
plated as
course.
well. It's not because I said so, and you're
Right,
just being straight disobedient. It's this is why, and this is what happens if you don't.
right.
Yeah.
But نمشيخ.
Um, for a girl in whom the tokens of virginity were not found by her husband, we have never found, ever since Moses and until now, anyone disagreeing with the one who stated that this is solely true if she was fully married and if proper witnesses testified that after the marriage agreement took place, she committed adultery in the presence and despite explicit warning as to the consequences of committing such an offense. Even the adulterer is to be warned. Such
Such
facts,
facts, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Such facts are not contested because they were all traceable back to Moses. Concerning all such facts, the rabbis stated the general outlines and also the details and the particulars of the entire Torah were told on Sinai. However, even though they were stated by Moses and there is therefore no disputing them, these specifications can, in addition, be extracted from the verses of the written Torah through the science of Torah interpretation given us. That's referring to the rational application of the principles of interpretation that the sages of Israel also inherited. So he's saying it's not just that we received them from Mount Sinai and we just have to take it all on blind faith, but that these are indicated in the text of the written Torah itself when you apply the principles of interpretation to it. And this is not referring to every aspect of rabbinic law or oral law. It's referring only to that category of oral law, which is called halacha to Moses from Mount Sinai. Other categories of oral law we do consider authoritative, but it has a different level of authority and origin. We can derive these known explanations from the written Torah through one of the various applications of Savarot, that is rational argumentation, through the Asmachtov, right? And that is a way of paralleling one idea next to another. And this term also can get used in more than one way. The proofs and the indications planted in the scripture. Here by scripture, he's referring to the other sacred literature and it beyond just the Torah. So he's saying, and also from indications that we find elsewhere in the Bible, and not just in the text of the first 5 books. How to extract these explanations from the Torah's verses can be a matter of dispute. So not the conclusion per se, but the way in which it could be proven from the text. That is sometimes disputed with regard to halacha Moshe Sinai, halacha to Moses from Sinai.
Thus, when you find the rabbis of the Talmud analyzing and disputing with one another in analytical debate and bringing proofs for any of these explanations or similar ones, they are not disputing the explanation. Example given when faced.
Conclusion would probably be a better word here. They're not disputing the conclusion, they're just disputing it, how the explanations of how you arrive to that conclusion.
Right. When faced with the suggestion that when the verse says the fruit of the glorious hadar tree, it might mean that we should use the pomegranate or the quince or some other fruit besides the etrog. And one sage produces a scriptural proof by stating that the phrase, the fruit of the glorious tree, indicates that the fruit must be of a tree whose bark tastes the same as its fruits, the etrog. And another says it indicates the fruit which dwells, from the word hadar, the dweller on trees throughout the year, also the etrog. While
I
still
never thought
another
about that. That's awesome.
While still another says the fruit which dwells by all bodies of water, hadar being related to the Greek word for water, again, the etrog. These proofs are brought not because the rabbis were unsure of the matter until these indications were found. We see that undoubtedly, since Joshua till now, the etrog was indeed taken with the lulav every year with no debate.
Let's
Rather,
explain what this is. I think a lot of viewers may not necessarily know what we're referring to. Anybody wants to expound on what
Not
the
a
lulav
lemon.
Go ahead.
Not a lemon.
So it's talking about the articles of vegetation, plants, parts of plants that were
Species
commanded in
of
the Torah
plants.
to take up during the holiday of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. It's talking about those pieces of plants, such as a palm frond, a hadas, a myrtle, and a citron, which is one of the origins of the popular citrus fruits, which were later cultivated. So it's referring to those 4 species that God commands us in the Torah to rejoice before Him using. So we're supposed to rejoice before God while having these fruits and plant parts with us. That's what this is discussing.
We can see it on the screen.
Come again?
I'm sharing the image. Can you see it?
No, I don't. I think I need to stop sharing. Here, go ahead. Yeah, now I can see.
Yeah. So the big lemon looking item at the bottom is the fruit in question that's been mostly discussed, and then you can see the other palm in the middle and the
And to be clear, it's big relative to a regular lemon that one would expect, but it is certainly not big compared to other citrons. That is actually
not too
on
big,
the
yeah.
lower end of size. If you see a Yemenite citron, they can be the size of a watermelon. It's insane. It's insane.
They do get pretty big. Yeah.
All right. هدية بخبط.
Rather, these proofs were later brought only as a result of their search for the precise indication planted in the verse, for the already well-known explanation. This is the purpose of their proofs concerning the identity of the Hadass, their proofs concerning the laws of monetary compensations for bodily injuries, as well as their proofs for the laws concerning the daughter of a Kohen, mentioned above. All such proofs are brought only on this basis. This is the meaning of the statement, the general laws and details were received by us from Moses. Example given, those matters which may be extracted through the interpretive rule of the general reference written in the Torah, followed by a particular reference, or through any other interpretive rules, were received by us through Moses, who received them from God on Sinai.
Victor.
Halacha leMoshe Sinai. But even though they were all presented to us by Moses, they still are not termed halacha leMoshe Sinai, laws given to Moses on Sinai. One cannot say that the fact that the fruit of the tree means an etrog is halacha leMoshe Sinai, or that, pardon?
Sinai.
Sinai. Laws given, or that the fact that one who wounds his fellow must pay monetary compensation rather than literally being, in effect, wounding himself, is halacha leMoshe Sinai, though it is already quite clear to us that all of these explanations were indeed given to us by Moshe. They still also have indications in Scripture, or can be derived by some means of scriptural analysis in the way we have explained. And these are therefore not termed laws coming totally through Moshe alone, only that which is not hinted at in Scripture, which is not.
He's saying that although that there are halachot that we believe were given to Moses from Mount Sinai, which can be derived from the text of the written Torah. However, the most specific use of the word halacha leMoshe Sinai doesn't refer to those, but rather it refers to the undisputed manner in which we do the commandments, when that manner is not derivable using the interpretive principles, but is purely from tradition, but undisputed tradition. That is the most specific use of halacha leMoshe Sinai.
And where do we leave off?
Right here. I move my cursor.
Only that which is not hinted at in Scripture, which is not associated with it, which is impossible to be extracted from the written Torah through any means of analysis, is designated by the special term halacha leMoshe Sinai.
It is because of this that when it was stated that a number of legal measurements are halacha leMoshe Sinai, halacha to Moses from Mount Sinai, it is because of this that it was asked in the Talmud, in Masechet and Tractate Sukkah 5b and 6a. How can you say that they are halacha leMoshe Sinai when the measurements are said to be alluded to in the verse? So the Rambam is explaining how he comes to why he's stating this based on the words of our ancient sages. How can you say that halacha XYZ has a status of halacha Moshe Sinai when the measurements are said to be alluded to in the verse, a land of wheat and barley, and wine and fig and pomegranate, a land of olive oil and honey. And the answer was, they are indeed halacha Moshe Sinai, and there is no real basis to extract them through scriptural analysis, as they actually have no indication anywhere in the Torah. But we happen to associate these mitzvot to the verse as a mnemonic device to make it easier to remember them, although they are not the intended meaning of the verse. They're not the pshat. And this is what the sages meant when they replied, it is merely an asmachta, whenever such an apparent derivation is mentioned.
Now I will list the majority of laws termed halacha Moshe Sinai, possibly all of them, and you will see the accuracy of what has been stated. Not one of them was derived through constructing a theorem, and it is impossible to associate any one of them to a scriptural verse, except if the verse is used as an asmata, as we have explained. We have never found that they derived them through constructing theorems or that they brought proofs for them from Scripture. They were procured solely from the lips of Moses, just as the Holy One, blessed be he, had given them to him. The list follows.
I'll read it for you. And I want you guys to notice how long and unbelievably lengthy this list is, and how feasible it may or may not have been to actually pass this along orally. I think you'll find that it's very believable and very feasible when we see how long it is. That's it. Now, yes, it's sort of long, 30 laws, but it is absolutely feasible to orally pass along 30 laws, as opposed to the widespread and popular claim among many less educated in the traditional Jewish world that every single word and dispute of the Talmud was given to Moses and passed along orally. Of course, that's unbelievable, but 30 laws, absolutely feasible. So these are the 30, possibly all, of those halachot, which have the special status of being halacha given to Moses from Mount Sinai. Number one, the measurement, 1/2 a log, for the oil required, as we find in Leviticus chapter 7, verse 12, for the mixture, for the bread of the special gratitude, the Todah offering. Number two, the measurement, 1/4 of a log, for the oil required per Numbers chapter 6, verse 15, for the offering given by a person on the completion of Nazarite, the completion of a Nazarite vow. Number three, the law that one is tahor, pure, during the 11 days between the two nidah periods. Right? Nidah meaning a woman's monthly cycle. Right? So the idea that one would be tahor during the 11 days between those periods is considered a halacha Moshe Sinai. Number four, the legal consideration of the continuance of a wall lengthwise in either direction when conforming to certain standards. The legal consideration of a space less than 3 tafahim. A tafah is a handbreadth. So that was one of the standard measurements in ancient times and in the rabbinic literature. The legal consideration of a space less than the width of 3 handbreadths and a solid surface to be regarded as non-existent. And they're not saying it doesn't exist. What they're saying is it's to be regarded as if it's to be regarded as if it's irrelevant with regard to certain laws. Right? Number 6, the legal consideration of a ceiling to be a bent continuation of its wall. And these may seem random, but in the context of specific scenarios and laws of the Torah, they're very relevant. Number 7, minimum dimensions of food for barachot. That is, for example, the Torah commandment to say a blessing after you are satiated. How much do you need to eat before you are regarded as satiated from a Torah perspective, to be obligated to say the blessing from the Torah. Minimum dimensions of what constitutes a separation between one's body and the water of the mikveh, which is a collection of water used for ritual purification purposes. 9. Minimum dimensions as to what constitutes a bona fide wall. This is a very practical thing. These are very practical concepts with regard to application of various laws. The skin which constitutes the parchment for the tefillin, that is the compartments, the small box, black box compartments that contain scriptural passages that we place on our left arm and between our eyes above our forehead. Right? The skin which constitutes the parchment for the mezuzah scroll. And when he says the skin, he's asking about, or he's referring to which type of skin, what kind of skin, which layer of skin, because a person who is familiar with the tanning process knows that there are clearly distinct types and places, or rather layers of skin, which can be used for different purposes. And it's not just like artificially or arbitrarily chosen as an idea, these different layers of skin, but rather the nature of different sources of leather, the nature of that skin itself lends to these different layers and types. So what type should be used? The skin which constitutes the parchment for the Torah scroll. Is it the outer side? Is it the inner side? Is it outer and inner side fused together or separated in one or the other after being separated? Number 13, the formation of the letter Shin on the head tefillin. Number 14, the formation of the knot on the straps of the head and arm tefillin. Number 15, the requirement of black straps for tefillin. Number 16, the requirement that the tefillin be cubes in shape as opposed to a circle or something else. Number 17, the requirement of a slit in the bases of the tefillin cubes through which the leather straps pass. 18, the requirement that the parchments be tied in a roll with threads made of the hair of a tahor, a pure animal, before placement into the tefillin. Number 19, the requirement that the compartments of the tefillin be sewn together with threads made from parts of a pure animal. That means a kosher animal. Number 16, the kind of ink with which the writing of a Torah scroll must be done. 21, the requirement that inkless ruled guidelines for the lettering be etched onto the parchment of a Torah scroll. 22, the rule that a girl below 3 years old and 1 day maintains regarding her eligibility to marry a Kohen, her status of virginity despite cohabitation. Right? And for all the ignoramuses and anti-Jewish bigots out there, such a law is not equivalent to condoning having relations with a girl below that age. It is solely with regard to whether or not she would still be eligible despite her having gone through such trauma. 23. The rule that the number of payah donations from a field, this is referring to the edge of the field, like the word payot, some people may be familiar with. The rule that the number of payah donations from a field consisting of more than one kind of grain is determined by whether the different grains are stored together or separately. 24, the amount of divergent grain, kilayim, which is unintentionally planted, may not be plowed. Let me read that again. The amount of a divergent grain, kilayim, which, if unintentionally planted, may not be plowed, remains 1/24th of the amount which must be dispersed to cover an entire field with a standard size of 50 by 50 amma. An amma is roughly a cubit from the tip of one's fingers to one's elbow. Even when the divergent grain concerned is of that fine type of which only a very small amount is dispersed within such a field. And you can see it's not expected that every individual will be able to be a master of all of these laws. 20, but we are not free to continue the pursuit of delving into God's word. 25, Though a standard field may not be plowed even 30 days before the actual Shemitah, that is the year in which we're supposed to let the land lay fallow every 7 years, that is what is called Shemitah. Though a standard field may not be plowed even 30 days before the actual Shemitah year begins, if it contains at least 10 saplings, that's a young tree, the entire field may be plowed up to the beginning of the Shemitah year. 26. If a food item is partly, oh, I'm sorry, this transliteration is just horrible. Tume. If a food item is partly tameh, that is impure, one may give the full percentage of terumah, a donated offering. One may give the full percentage of a offering due from both the impure and the pure parts of the food, from the tohar part alone. I would like to reread that. If a food item is partly tameh, I see. If a food item is not completely tameh, but partly tameh, let's say that that food item has more than one constituent or component, one can give the full percentage of that complete food item for being a terumah, being an offering in the temple, and due from the amount that is due from both the tameh and the tahor parts. From the there may be a mistake here, so I'm not going to spend too much time. There may be a mistake in the translation or in my understanding, but I think it's a mistake.
Is it basically saying that the offered part, the tithe, if you will, could have a little bit of mixed
I
in
think
it?
that's what it's saying, but I don't think it's a good translation.
If it's like really overdone, you don't offer it. But it seems like if
I don't want to
there's
go into detail about something
yeah.
I haven't studied in depth recently. On Shabbat, on the Sabbath, the instructor may find the place by lamplight from which the school children are to start reading. A woman is even obligated to bring a sin offering if she transports an object in her sinar. A sinar in modern Hebrew refers to a bib, but in Talmudic Hebrew and Mishnaic Hebrew, and yes, I know the Talmud is mostly in Aramaic, that's the Talmud Bavli, but it does still have Hebrew terminology in various places. So a woman is even obligated to bring a sin offering if she transports an object in her sinat apron. This is horrible, apron. He's translating sinat as apron because that's how sinat is used in modern Hebrew, but that is not what it means. Oh my goodness. And there are even communities, I shouldn't laugh, but it's this is why we should not only learn, Talmud without also learning how to use a dictionary or how words are used in the Bible. The sages of the Talmud didn't just expect, but required that before we delve into the Talmud, we should first be masters of the Hebrew text of the Torah. And that's just not usually the case nowadays in the Orthodox world. That's not usually the case. But if you would investigate this term sufficiently, you would know that although it's used for an apron in modern Hebrew, that is not what it means in this context. But rather it refers to a type of undergarment. I don't want to get too much into it, but it's a type of undergarment. So a woman is even obligated to bring a sin offering if she transports an object in her sinar on Shabbat, on the Sabbath, even if she places the object in the back of her apron. And see, you can kind of see here that it doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, I guess if it were an apron, you could put a strap back there, but that's not what it refers to. It's more a type of under trousers. 29. The right for a wine seller to mix strong wine into his soft wine product without being guilty of deception. As this is an improvement upon the product, right? So this concept that if you make something even better, I can see how one could debate this, but in this particular instance, this is considered a halacha Moshe Sinai. The law that Jews living in Ammon and Moab, these are areas to the east of the Red Sea, not Red Sea, to the east, well, also that, but to the east of the Dead Sea and the land of Israel. The law that Jews living in Ammon and Moab must give ma'aser ani, that is tithe for the poor every seventh year. Wherever we will come across one of these laws in our commentary on the Mishnah, we will elaborate upon it with God's help. Odayat, your turn.
The categories of the oral law recorded in the Mishnah. Thus, the divisions of the oral law based in the Torah, as explained above, are 5. 1. Received explanations given by Moses, which also have an indication in the verses and can thus be extracted through analytical means. Such laws are not contested. Once someone should state, "So I have received," there is no room for disagreement.
And this is what is original Kabbalah. The term used there is Kabbalah in the original text, and not what it's come to mean in pop lingo. Just because you hear some term used in the Orthodox world does not necessarily mean that that's how it was historically used in Rabbinic Judaism.
This means they took it upon themselves or accepted it.
Well, they received it.
Received it.
Sometimes Kabbalah can connote to take something upon yourself, but there it really just means they received it from their teacher in a line of transmission. All right, bo namshich. Let's continue. Number 2.
Laws called halacha lemoshe misinai, which have
Right,
no
this is a chaf.
halacha
There you go.
lemoshe misinai, which have no scriptural indications, as we have explained. These likewise are not contested. 3. Laws actually extracted by reasoning and analytical methods, which may be subject to debate, as we have mentioned. The final law is decided by majority vote. Such conflicts will occur when there is a difference in analysis. Thus, they say, if it is previously established law, we must accept it. But if it is a contemporary decision, we may debate it.
This has all sorts of very practical ramifications for the modern world, in which we have a plethora of new circumstances and scenarios that people never had to deal with historically. And there is a need to heed the instruction of the scholars of Israel nowadays in the present time, even though they are not the Sanhedrin, because it's our duty to get counsel from wise men who are educated in the source texts. But that's with a caveat. It's not really a caveat. I don't know if that's the right use of the term caveat, but that's with that's with the knowledge that although it is our duty to get wise counsel, even if they are not the supreme council of the people of Israel, the supreme council, even if not, but it is important to not equate the opinion, however convincing it is, of any single rabbi as having authority over the entire people of Israel. So what this means is that there is a need for authoritative analysis and reaching of conclusions with regard to how the Torah will apply to all these new situations and new knowledge that we have in the modern era. But if it's not coming from the Supreme Court of the people of Israel, it doesn't have authority. It's supposed to actually be debated, and all too often debate is not permitted in certain sectors of the Jewish world. And I really do warn everybody to try to stay away from getting too dependent on those communities. You do not want to be in a community that does not allow debate, or that allows debate, but if they disagree with you, you're going to be ostracized, and your children won't have a school or friends in that community. You don't want to be part of that kind of community. And thankfully, there are plenty of communities in the Jewish world all over Israel where they are not that way. But keep your eyes out. You can usually tell. I'm not going to get into it right now, but you can usually tell what kind of community would behave in that way and which wouldn't. So there is room for discussion. There's room for disagreement with regard to contemporary matters and how halacha and Torah laws may apply to them.
What's the line of delineation or definition that that says this is the line of previously established law versus all the contemporary? I'm sure it goes back quite a ways. At what point do we?
Well, in our context, what's relevant to us right now is contemporary as opposed to what past Sanhedrins, great Sanhedrins, had discussed. If they didn't discuss it, then there was never a definitive final ruling given that is authoritative over the entire people of Israel. There can be other courts other than the Supreme Sanhedrin. There could be other courts, lower courts, that did come to an agreement. But those courts only have authority over the communities that accepted them upon themselves. They do not have inherent authority over the entire people of Israel. And this is even if their conclusions, one could say, are logically correct, logically sound. It doesn't matter if it's sound or not. It has no inherent authority if it's not coming from the Supreme Court of the people of Israel, who sit in the place that the Almighty chose.
So if
That's Torah commandments.
if
Go
there's
ahead.
if there's a belief today that is at odds with an established law, it must be thrown out. There is no place or nor new text or
By
anything that
established law, what do you mean?
what it says here. If it's been previously established law, we must accept it.
Established by who?
The great Sanhedrin.
There you go.
Versus a contemporary decision. In
Correct.
other words, we really must use that as our filter for all of the halakha that we deal with on a contemporary basis.
You can have in common lingo in the religious Jewish world, you do commonly have the term halakha applied to religious decisions of scholars even today. They will refer to their decisions as halakha, or their students will refer to their community guidelines as halakha. People need to be aware that it gets used in a much broader way than you may find it used in the source text. And it's not necessarily a problem. It's a problem when there's a conflation. What needs to change is the lack of distinguishing in our regular speech. People need to get in the habit of qualifying and specifying what type of halakha are they talking about. Are they talking about national halakha from the Supreme Council of the people of Israel, from the Great Sanhedrin? Or are they talking about localized halakha? Are they talking about the halakha of their personal rabbi? And that's not universally applicable, but it could understand halakha in the sense of a unifying consensus protocol or policy with regard to a certain matter. Right? So halakha is like policy, or procedural policy or guidelines for either the community or for one's entire people, or even for one's own personal life. You might have gotten an opinion that's not necessarily relevant to an entire population, but relevant to people in certain unique situations, and you could call that halakha as well. But you should specify that this was a psak halakha from a specific person, as opposed to from the Supreme Council of the people of Israel. That's an important distinction that is very, very rarely made. And so certainly be careful if any of our viewers, anybody watching, listening, if you're delving into the sea of knowledge that is the Jewish world, especially Jewish bookstores, always keep in the forefront always keep on your mind the awareness that 9 times out of 10, when you see something referred to as halakha in more recent Jewish literature, it is not referring to halakha that was decided by the Supreme Council of the people of Israel, the Great Sanhedrin. It is not. 9 times out of 10 is referring to various rulings and opinions of rabbis, even just in the last 100 or 200 years. which could be very, very insightful and valuable and may have authority in a given location, but it does not have universal authority derived from the Torah, from God's word, or from the sages of the Talmud, for that matter. So always keep that in mind.
You know,
But
even on a Humash, when you're reading Torah text, you'll look down here and you'll see the commentary, and we tend to think of that as being as equal to the text,
heaven
and
forbid.
oh, we really need to be careful there.
Definitely, definitely. Someone else would like to read?
Divergences of opinion,
Yes,
never
sir.
over the words of Moses, ever. It must be emphasized that analysis and conflicts occurred only in those matters in which no data were received. All throughout the Gemara, one finds the sages searching for the points of divergence, which caused a difference of opinion among past authorities. It asks, what lies behind this disagreement? What is the reason of Rabbi so and so, and what practical difference is there between them? In most places, it answers these questions, presenting the reasons which caused the divergence. For example, it would state the formula Rabbi so and so emphasizes this consideration, and Rabbi so and so stresses this one, etc. Do not imagine instead that the sages received the answers to the debated issues from Moshe. You would then have to blame a dissenting opinion on error or forgetfulness to say that one authority accurately procured a transmitted law and his opinion heard incorrectly, forgot what he really heard, or failed to hear his instructor's complete statement. Further, do not attempt to defend such a notion by citing the maxim. Ever since the increase of the disciples of Hillel and Shammai, who hadn't studied under their teachers sufficiently, the number of divergencies increased in Israel, and the Torah was multiplied into two ways of being understood. Such talk is, by my life, hideously repulsive and despicable. Such words are those of senseless people who do not understand matters of basic principle, and such words smear the people from whom we receive the commandments. That's a harsh statement.
Yep.
The entire explanation is less than worthless. What brings such people to believe such a misconceived notion that their lack of having sufficiently contemplated the statements of the Talmud's sages, while they correctly gathered from the sages' statements that the explanation of the commandments came from Moses. They failed to distinguish between these basic explanations that Moses gave us and their details and ramifications that the sages themselves extracted through their own expert analysis. The sages were free to disagree with each other's analysis, but not with the facts which came from Moses.
Odeya,
If you, Mhm.
go ahead.
If
I'll
you
read.
were
I'll read. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Odeya.
If you are at all in doubt of what I am saying, at least agree when it comes to controversies in rabbinic law, such as the controversies between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel over whether we clear the table first and then we rinse our hands, or rinse our hands first and then clear the table. Do not imagine that one of these statements was transmitted uninterruptedly from Moses to us, and the other was not. The cause of their dispute is solely that which is recorded in the Gemara. One of them prohibited the utilization of ill-bred manservants, while the other one permitted it. All similar disputes are to be understood in the same manner. They are in reality the branchlets of the branches of branches extending from the basic principles received by both debaters.
In other words, they are not disputes regarding the essential explanations that we received as a nation going back to Moses, but rather disputes over minute detail of how to understand those ideas, perhaps how to apply them. As for the statement, ever since the increase of the disciples of Shammai and Hillel, who did not study under the teachers sufficiently, conflict increased in Israel. Let me read this again. As for the statement, ever since the increase of disciples of Shammai and Hillel, who did not study under their teachers sufficiently, conflict increased in Israel. The sum and substance of it is clear. Any two men equal in intellect, ability of induction, and the knowledge of the established axioms from which they will form theorems will have no disagreements at all in their theorems, and if some conflict of opinions should arise, it will happen very rarely, as in the case with Shammai and Hillel, who differed just a few laws. This is because their opinions were similar in all that they derived by way of constructing theorems. The axioms were likewise interpreted the same way by one as by the other. However, when their disciples' diligence for attaining wisdom slacked, and their abilities of logical analysis grew weak compared to the abilities of Hillel and Shammai, their masters, then conflicts resulted between them concerning the analysis of many matters, since each one of them constructed his theorems in accordance with his intellect and interpretation of the ramifications of the given axioms. I know that is a mouthful, but it's basically saying that if people are using mathematical application of logic, that they will almost always see eye to eye if they are of roughly equal intellect. Sometimes you may have different opinions, but generally speaking, you're going to be much more in line with each other on how to apply methodical, step-by-step logical reasoning. And what he's saying is that the copious amount of dispute and lack of clarity that we find in the Talmud and uncertainty with regard to a lot of things is a consequence of the students of Hillel and Shammai lacking in rational application of logical deduction, of the process of logical thinking. If this, then this, right? If X, then Y. And he's not necessarily saying each and every one of their disciples, but it arose among their disciples. I suspect that had to do something with the Roman occupation and the emotions and turmoil surrounding that. You know, a lot of time injustice breeds more injustice, and people have their emotions stirred much more strongly in those terrible circumstances of foreign occupation and oppression of the land of Israel, the homeland of the Jewish people. And when you're pushed up against a wall, it's easy for people to feel kind of panicky sometimes and rush to rash conclusions. And their logic can more easily be skewed by insecurities and other issues rather than trying to be. It just becomes more difficult to be very objective in those kinds of situations.
So if we all understand the rules and methods of interpretation, we would all be able to understand each other's arguments if we were
At least
using
we'd
the same
understand them
math.
better.
Right.
We'd at least understand them better, and we would agree substantially more. I don't think that Rambam here is saying that we would always agree, but we would agree
No.
more.
We would understand why the argument is logical, at least.
Yeah. And sometimes you can have more than one logical conclusion for what may or may not should be done in certain scenarios. Each logical conclusion being able to be arrived depending on the axiom that one begins with of certain factors. Axiom is like a beginning point in a logic. So like the starting point of
thus the need to vote on it.
Absolutely. But when Namshich, Victor, go ahead.
Too late. I heard it.
And you're hearing things.
Nonetheless,
It's not on purpose, I swear.
I
should
know.
not
I look like a Hector. It's fine.
Oh man.
Uh,
Sorry. It's so funny. Oh
yeah,
man.
it is. It is funny, actually. Not,
It's all
nonetheless,
Am I the only I think I'm the only person who has ever had this problem. Oh,
that I
with your
can
name.
recall. Yeah, that I can recall.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I caused the initial problem, so that's fine. And it just stuck forever and ever.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Hector.
Mm.
Oh,
Nonetheless, we may not take them to task for this. For we cannot demand of the two sages that they conduct their debates at the level of a Joshua and Pinchas. Likewise,
Pinhas. Either
Pinhas,
a cha or a ha.
Pinhas, Phineas,
Oh boy.
like uh, Hector. Likewise, we have no apprehensions as to the validity of all their arguments, even though they were not as great as Shammai and Hillel had been, or as those even greater. I'm misunderstanding. Did he just say that Joshua and Pinhas were less authoritative than
No,
Hillel and Shammai? The
no, no,
opposite,
no.
I would think. Okay. For the Holy
Saying,
One,
yeah, go ahead.
for the Holy One, blessed be He, did not command us to perform our service to Him in such a way, that is, to obey only those sages who are the equals of their earlier predecessors, but He commanded us to obey the sages of our individual generation. You shall come to the judge who will be in those days. Deuteronomy 17:9. In this way did conflicts arise, and not because one's authority erred in correctly hearing the preceding halachos, but I'm sorry, that one was right and the other wrong. How brilliantly clear is this to all who contemplate it, and how valuable and magnificent is this fundamental fact concerning the mitzvah. To
To
continue,
continue,
go
to
ahead.
Yeah, go
continue with the divisions of the oral law, we now come to the parts of the oral law which are not explanations of written laws. For the laws the prophets and sages decreed throughout the generations to erect a fence around the laws of the Torah. The Holy One, blessed be He, ordered them to institute such precautions in the all-encompassing maxim, and you shall safeguard my safeguards, Leviticus chapter 18, verse 30, which is explained by the tradition to mean make precautions on top of my precautions. The sages called these post-biblical decrees gezerot.
good.
Disputes sometimes arose over the instituting these gezerot, namely one sage perceived a need to enact a certain precaution while another disagreed with him. This occurrence appears quite often in the Talmud in the form of Rabbi so-and-so decreed such and such because of this and that, but Rabbi so-and-so did not.
Let's pause for a second. Oh, actually, I'm sorry for interrupting. Because yeah, before they're gonna get to it, but I just want to test you guys, test the waters. So, who can give a few examples from classical Judaism of what may constitute a gezerah? Gezerot is the plural of gezerah, usually translated as decree, right? And this is not a debate of how we would apply the Torah per se, but rather fences. We're talking about fences to help strengthen our observance of the Torah or help distance us from violating it. What are some examples of gezerot, classical Judaism?
Maybe the laws of Gerut, not walking a certain distance.
Can you say the laws of an eruv?
Is a route? Yeah, a route. Yeah, like not going too far.
Those are two related things, but they are not the same.
18 minutes.
Those are two distinct things. Those are not the same thing. So an eruv is a concept It should be also physical to some degree, but usually it's not so much. It's a concept of a certain area which is enclosed either by a wall or by a string, but the string is more of a more recent innovation. But it's an enclosed area that enclosure allows for that area to be considered a single domain for the purposes of carrying uh, in and out of the one's private domain into the public domain. And in the merit of this enclosure of that area, it gives the public domain a sort of status of uh, a private domain. But you can really only do this with a public domain that is not truly a public domain, but is only rabbinically treated as a public domain by rabbinic decree. So yeah, there is within that certain concepts of a decree. It's a little maybe too complicated to explain right now without getting sidetracked.
So maybe Purim
So
or
Purim,
Hanukkah, because those are not biblical mandated holidays, but
that's
yet
in
they
the
are
right
observed.
direction, but they're not exactly safeguards. I think maybe
Okay.
in some way you could say it's a safeguard, but they're not usually viewed as a gezerah. A gezerah is usually a precaution of some sort. Think of it more like a precaution. Some law that was instituted as a precaution.
In today's day, within the Orthodox, maybe
Oh,
using
there's a
electricity,
ton.
using
Yeah,
electricity, for
definitely,
example.
definitely. Although the majority would say it's a Torah prohibition, which is not. It's not.
Yeah,
It's just not. Even if it were, you can't say that with authority unless our sages said that. It's
because in
not.
reality, electricity is not fire, right? So
Absolutely, it's not
it
fire. They
could
do
create
try to
heat,
make
but it can
it's
create
not even
heat, but
heating
yeah,
necessarily. It can cause heat, but it does not even necessarily cause heat.
yeah.
But that is definitely if we would be more honest and use more accurate terminology for the way using electric devices on Shabbat is treated in the Orthodox establishment today. Um, a more accurate term would be a gezerah, as you said, a sort of rabbinic decree. Though it's not usually called that, it's usually equated with Torah prohibition, but it could be a legitimate gezerah. It would just be much better if people would actually call it a gezerah. Um, and that's what it actually is. It's just a gezerah of non-universally authoritative courts and individual rabbis. But it is a gezerah. That's an excellent example. It's a gezerah, it's a decree, a rabbinic decree of some sort, regardless of whether or not people think it's actually from the Torah. They can think whatever they want. Yeah, that's definitely a gezerah. What are some other examples?
Sorry, I lost power, so I've been gone for about 3 minutes.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if
We're
you mentioned 18 minutes before sunset.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Very, very good. הודיה, יש לך דוגמה? Do you have an example?
Um, nothing's coming to mind off the top of my head, but
All right.
I don't think this one fits, but the portion when you're making challah, or it's called challah, the offering that you burn.
Yeah, I don't think that's a gezerah.
I don't think so either.
So some things, yeah, some things I can see may or may not be viewed that way. But so I'll give you guys one. The waiting certain amount of time between eating meat and eating dairy. There is no Torah prohibition to wait 5 or 6 hours between eating meat and dairy. There is such a prohibition. It's not a Torah prohibition. It's a rabbinic prohibition to distance one from eating them together. Uh, Even if like there's something in your mouth stuck between your teeth while you eat the other. But that's
Not
a gezerah.
established.
So what?
It says, but is it established that the time is not established?
That's not established as a universal law. There are different opinions in the Talmud, and even in practice, in traditional classical Jewish communities, there are different amounts of time for waiting, and some of them are way, way less long than one might expect.
Leniency and rigidity in different camps, if you will.
Yep. And that's because the exact time was not established by the great Sanhedrin. It was simply that you shouldn't eat them together. And so then the extent to which you wait to make sure that you don't have it any longer between your teeth, you got to remember that people sometimes didn't have the best of teeth, still don't have the best of teeth. They didn't have all the cleaning utensils that we have now. So they couldn't even consider these things. So the different communities came up with different amounts of time you need to wait for it to sort of one to be cleared out of your mouth so that you could then eat the other without mixing.
Can you give a couple brief examples, like
Of other gezerot?
Yeah, no, I meant of this particular item, like rinsing your mouth. Some groups would hold that. I think after dairy, you could rinse your mouth and eat meat.
Yeah, correct. Or eat bread between that will help like absorb the flavor of one from between your teeth. Another gezerah, not eating dairy with poultry, with birds, kosher birds. That's a gezerah. It's not a Torah prohibition. That's general. That is the general consensus in the Orthodox establishment. They hold it's forbidden, but by rabbinic decree. In the
So
Talmud, you find it. Go ahead.
If you were to eat, let's say, you mix them, you end up eating a mixed poultry and dairy. Is that
I didn't
how?
understand what you just said. If you could say it again.
If you're mixing the two products, let's say you eat dairy and poultry or chicken,
Yeah.
are you in violation then? Is it how heavy is the transgression then? Since it's
Are you
already
missing? It's not a Torah prohibition. The general consent. There may be somebody who thinks it's a Torah prohibition, but the general consensus, even in the ultra Orthodox world, is that that's a rabbinic prohibition. It's a gezerah. We're giving it as an example of a gezerah to distance us from making the mistake of thinking it's permitted to eat cattle, bovine meat with dairy. Especially the less educated of the Jewish people might see someone eating poultry with dairy and try to learn from their practice. They may be well intended in trying to learn from their practice and see that they're eating some kind of a meat with dairy, and so then they may make the mistake of eating actual like beef with dairy, for example. So it's to help distance us from putting a stumbling block in front of the masses. However, in the Talmud itself, we see example of that concept not yet having spread throughout the entire Jewish people. This is already several generations after the Great Sanhedrin no longer existed. So there is room to be lenient on people who eat dairy with poultry, although that is not the normal perspective in the Orthodox world. It should be, because that's in our text. So really what this is a gezerah that is nearly universal, pretty much universal. It is universal in the Orthodox establishment, but it's nearly universal in the religious world. However, even if something is a universal practice in the religious Jewish world, that does not mean it is issued from the Supreme Sanhedrin. It does not mean it has legal authority from the Great Sanhedrin. It has to come from the Great Sanhedrin. It can have, well, it has to come from the Great Sanhedrin in order to have universal authority. But it can certainly have, in practical terms, universal authority, practically speaking, if all the communities of Israel have accepted it. But that is going to be when you're interacting with those communities. And it's not the universal practice in all Jewish communities. Certainly in the religious or the more devout circles. Yes, sir.
If I understand, the topic is brought up, is it because of I guess boiling a kid in your mother's milk. Chickens don't have milk. Is it meat? Is it the same
It
thing?
is meat. Is
It is
a
meat.
meat that is prohibited? Of course, it's
Right,
meat.
right. And so, as I understand it, they didn't say, okay, we're not calling it meat, but we're going to treat it like meat. We're going to treat it the same as that meat. No,
Yes, meat is not the right word to use. That meat is a good expression. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. In other words,
correct.
we're not saying that it's the same as beef.
Right.
We're saying that we're going to treat it that way,
As
so that
if,
yes,
so as
and
not to
then
put a stumbling block.
that was
So,
basically accepted universally.
so as not to put a stumbling block in front of people who may mistakenly think that you can eat dairy with beef, for example. I think though that there is room to question the applicability of the reasoning in more educated parts of the world. And I don't mean like super educated. I just mean nominal education in much of the Jewish world, the entirety of the Jewish world today. And that is that the majority of people now can identify the difference between beef meat and poultry meat. But throughout history, it's hard for us to conceive of the level of ignorance that was pervasive around the world throughout history and still is in some parts of the world. And you can get an idea of this by looking, for example, at European drawings, European renditions of like elephants and tigers and lions, that they had heard of these creatures, but they really didn't know what they look like. So they would draw pictures of them, and it's really hilarious, like the way they draw them, because they didn't really know what they look like. They didn't have photographs. They were just using their imagination to try to put an image to these descriptions they had heard. So some people may not have known what chicken meat looked like or what poultry meat generally looks like in comparison to beef. But now it's more widely recognized that knowledge is more pervasive, as well as access to knowledge. Historically, people didn't have access to knowledge like we do today. It's not comparable in the least. It's much more easy to learn today if somebody actually wants to learn. Back in the day, regular folk would learn just by looking at how more educated people behaved because they didn't know how to read, or they didn't, even if they did know how to read, they didn't necessarily have access to books. You might have one volume of the Talmud in an entire region. It's not like today, every single house has the entire Talmud on their computer. Even if you don't, you can with a click of a button.
Yeah, you have a handful of sages with that one rare manuscript being asked. They're not being asked 100,000 questions today because it's impossible to answer all of that.
Correct.
So today we get the mouse and we click and we ask 100,000 questions in a day, and
Yep.
we're able to find out what the answer
sure.
is.
We will always need scholars, and we should always recognize that the need for scholars. But it is a mistake to think that the proper way to keep Torah is for every single question and doubt we have, we turn to a scholar. That's not practical. And nobody does it. They might imagine that they're doing it. They're not. There is a need for personal responsibility to learn to the extent that you can. And that's a lot more of an extent than most people may realize or admit. But yes, there will always be a need to turn to scholars because we might misunderstand something in the text. Right? We need to double check ourselves. Let's continue. We can start again at the beginning. I interrupted.
Disputes sometimes arose over instituting these gezerot, namely when one sage perceived a need to enact a certain precaution, while another disagreed with him. This occurrence appears quite often in the Talmud in the form of Rabbi so-and-so decreed such and such because of this and that, but Rabbi so-and-so did not. Hence, this is another one of the various causes of disputes. For example, the prohibition of having poultry, as distinct from meat, together with dairy products is a post-biblical gezerah enacted for the purpose of avoiding sin. whereas biblically, we are solely forbidden to mix dairy products with meat of a kosher animal. The sages nevertheless prohibited a mixture with poultry as well, in order to avert the inadvertent transgression through the confusion of poultry with meat of the biblical prohibition. Yes, there was an authority who had never enacted this decree, for Rabbi Yosei the Galilean would permit poultry with milk, and all the residents of his city would eat the combination, as it is mainly related in the Talmud.
Plainly.
Oh, plainly. However,
They were not
once
heretics. They would you would be wrong to view them as heretics. It would be it would be more severe to view them as heretics for not considering that gezerah, that decree, that precaution. We would be, if we were to treat them as heretics and mistreat them as less kosher individuals for not embracing it, we would be the ones in a greater violation than anything they would be doing for eating chicken parmesan, for example.
So we would be guilty of adding to the Torah.
If we are adamant that that they're violating the Torah when they're not, if we
Right.
say that the laws of treating people with basic decency doesn't apply to them because they didn't accept this non-Sanhedrin enactment, we would be the violators. It's a big problem in the Jewish world, and it estranges the majority of the Jewish world from Torah today. It's a huge problem.
However, once any gezerah is consented upon by the sages, no dissension from that gezerah is thereupon permitted, and once its prohibition becomes widespread among all the Jewish population, that gezerah can never be fully repealed.
Right, and here he's talking about from the Supreme Council of the Jewish people.
Even the prophets themselves were not permitted to nullify such a gezerah. This is expressly stated in the Talmud, Avodah Zarah 36a. Elijah
Memory be for everything.
would have been unable to nullify any of the 18 gezeros of the school of Shammai and the school of Hillel. And the reason
they were actual members of the Sanhedrin.
And the reason brought for this fact is, since their prohibitions were already widespread throughout Israel.
Now, I also want to add, because he's not going into detail about it, but you can find in the laws of Mamrim in the Mishneh Torah and in the laws of Sanhedrin, you can there find that it has to spread within the first few generations. If it does not spread throughout the entire Jewish people after a few generations, it's automatically nullified as having authority over the entire Jewish people. And on the other hand, if something spread throughout the entire Jewish people and was maintained for generations, and then 10 generations later, people just stop doing it, it's still authoritative if it's coming from the Supreme Council of the Jewish people. It's still binding, even though nobody's doing it.
Once it reaches that level of crossing that line, if you will,
right.
Even though you stop, you hit the level of requirement.
Right, and this can be debatable and gray if we're honest with ourselves when it comes to ancient gezerot, because there's no objective way to know for sure to what extent something spread. But we rely on the record as preserved by the Talmudic sages because it's all we have. Certainly this applies,
today.
but all the more so this applies today when there are all sorts of a ton of enactments that are made, and most certainly do not spread throughout the entire Jewish people. Just because it is popular and strong in a community that I personally like, doesn't mean that it now has force over the entire Jewish people. Never mind the fact that it didn't come from the Supreme Court of the Jewish people, the Great Sanhedrin. Never mind that fact. I mean, that's also the issue. I don't remember what else I was going to say.
Kidney out. You're talking about kidney out.
I wasn't, not specifically, but yeah.
No, I know.
Of course. Yes.
So
So
like
go ahead.
the Sephardic may hold to the Sephardim may hold to one thing and the Ashkenazim may hold to another thing.
Right. And just because
Communally.
Ashkenazim are the majority in the United States does not mean that Sephardic Jews are now sinning when they don't hold by Ashkenazi practice. Even though Sephardim are the minority. Why? Because they never accepted it upon themselves. And it's not, in its origin, these customs that distinguish between them, for the most part, are not instructions that derived or were given by the great Sanhedrin, but rather they are all post-Sanhedrin enactments. They may even make sense, they may be rational, but they
Sure.
don't have inherent authority. That is not discussed enough in the religious Jewish world. And
Yeah.
it's not that they choose to not talk about it. The majority don't even know. They're completely oblivious, the majority. In the
Sure.
Orthodox world, it's a big, big, big problem. And
Yeah.
this leads to the estrangement of the majority of the Jewish people.
Mm.
If they understood this, there would be far more tolerance of communities that may love the Torah and accept the Torah, accept the covenant of Torah, but concept or practice XYZ that's popular in the ultra Orthodox black hat community just doesn't really work in their reality, in their circumstance, and they could be viewed more humanely, more brotherly, if the ultra Orthodox establishment had more awareness of this system of hierarchy of halachic authority, which it's just not taught much. They could learn it if they would learn halacha from source text, but it rarely happens. It rarely happens. They learn mostly back and forth hypothetical debate from the Talmud, and that's about it. Very, very little actual halacha. There are certain Orthodox communities that are an exception to the rule. I'm talking about generally. Big problem. If we had our act together in the religious world, then things would be different. In other words, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's not only secular Jews who need to repent, it's the religious Jewish world that also needs to repent as a community. Number 5, Spar Hamesh.
I can read it. Laws initiated by the sages after their investigations and approval either of A, the practice of the people which neither add on to nor subtract from any mitzvah, or of B, legal institutions which will be beneficial for the people insofar as Torah matters are concerned. These are called minhagim, practices commonly translated as customs or traditions, or takanos, amendments, both of which we are forbidden to encroach upon. Solomon has already stated, "And him who breaks through a fence will a snake bite? Will a snake bite?"
A snake is going to bite somebody who breaks through the fence. It's a
Okay.
metaphor, right?
Yeah. Ecclesiastes 10:8, Abodazara 27b. There are many, many such takanos that are not recorded in the Gemara
That
or
are
the
that
Mishnah.
are
Oh,
that are recorded.
There are recorded in the Gemara or the Mishnah. They deal with forbidden and permitted and with monetary matters. Some were decreed by the prophets, such as Takanot, Moses, Joshua, and Ezra. It is as is stated, Moses decreed the Takana that Israel should ask about and do research on the laws of Passover on Passover, Megillah 4a. And Moses decree Takana, the Takana of Chazon, the feeder, the blessings which consist of what is now the first fruit blessings of our grace after meals.
When
At the
we
time,
when we read the H in transliterated Hebrew, we want to be careful to not have friction in our mouth unless there's a dot under it. You could get away with it, but if there's no dot, You don't want to have any friction. It can significantly change the meaning of a word. Frequently, the difference between ha, and ha. Like hazon would be a vision, whereas hazon is the one who provides, the nourisher.
Mm. At the time of the manna fell for Israel, many takanots were decreed by Joshua and Ezra. Some of the takanot are associated with individual sages of the Mishnah. Hillel decreed the takana principle. Was it Shibish?
Shavi'it. Yeah, Shavi'it.
Severi 10:3. Rabbi Gamaliel, the elder, decreed Gittim 4:3, and Rabban Jochanan ben Zakkai
Here's an
decreed.
example of what I was referring to, H with a dot under it. That
Oh, I see.
signifies the letter het. The underlying letter is a het and not a het.
Perfect. And Rosh Hashanah 4:1. Many times, Rabbi so and so decreed this, and Rabbi so and so decreed that. It is found in the Gemara. Other
This
takanots are
most in most books, the transliterations are more consistent than this one. This is a very valuable book that we're reading, and I don't know of another translation. I would love if somebody knows to know of another translation of it. But this one's unique in that the guy who wrote it, sometimes he's very accurate in how he's transliterating. Other times he's, oh my gosh, it's just all over the place. And in this word alone, he's mixing Ashkenazi pronunciation with classical Middle Eastern transliteration. It's just, and other places he's using the Ashkenazi S where there should be a TH or a T. It's really kind of funny. Here's an S for a tav
yeah.
dot, which is clearly Ashkenazi, but here he's using a het. It's
Yeah, that's
funny.
one thing I noticed on Ashkenazi translations. They always use S's in place of
Oh
T's,
yeah,
I think.
yeah, but they don't usually do this. That's unique to this book. This guy is sometimes ultra accurate, other times he's not good.
Yeah.
I think he's struggling. He has an inner struggle as he's transliterating here. Should I be mainstream Ashkenazi or should I be accurate? Ashkenazi, accurate.
Other takanot are associated with the full body of the sages. The Talmud introduces these takanots with the phrase in Usha. They decree.
Plural, they.
They decree. And Kesubos 49b. Or the sages decree, or such and such is a takana of the sages, that there are many such statements.
Thus,
Does
all
okay, go
the
ahead.
oral laws recorded in the Mishnah may be categorized into these five groups. Some are explanations of the Torah, which are known to be transmitted by Moses, but which have indications in the written Torah as well, or they are explanations which may be methodologically extracted from them. Some are halakha Moshe Sinai, halakha to Moses from Mount Sinai, and some are original ramifications extracted entirely through scriptural analysis alone, and upon which there are disputes. And some are gezerot, decrees, and some are tapanot, edicts. And some are minhagim, customs. So that concludes this chapter. Does anyone have any questions regarding what we've read? It's a very important chapter we just read, although it may be a bit detailed. You're on mute. There you go.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking of what questions there are. It's to
Can
me
anyone
it's
think of a takana, I'm sorry, a gezerah with regard to Rosh Hashanah, the upcoming holiday?
Wasn't honey? I don't
No,
know. Just
that's
guessing.
funny. That's funny. That's a minhag. That's a minhag.
Well,
A
blowing
post-Talmudic
many
minhag.
different combinations of the shofar blasts to make
That's
sure
right.
that they get all the right ones because
That's
they're not
right.
sure.
And these at least when they're coming from the Talmud, they are takanot. Well, all of them you could say are, I'm not takanot, gezerot, because they're trying to cover all the bases to fulfill the Torah obligation. Since there's some uncertainty with regard to some matters of it. How about blowing a shofar on Shabbat?
I found that it's not permitted.
It's a gezerah to distance us from a possible violation of transferring an object from one domain to another.
Oh, okay. What happens when it falls on Shabbat? If it falls on Shabbat.
That's what we're talking about. That's what we're
Okay.
talking about. The gezerah, the decree is that you do not blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah if Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbat, lest a person, in attempt to fulfill the proactive commandment to blow the shofar, they are tempted to violate the more severe prohibition of transferring from one domain to another. I think, though, that there's a good question of how that applies in a area or region where it is very rare or perhaps even non-existent that you would have the prohibition against transferring from one domain to another. If you're in a place where there is no issue of transferring from one domain to another, would this apply? So that the mainstream practice is, yeah, you don't do it anywhere. I'm not so sure I'm not sure it's correct, just being honest. But you respect the practice of your community. If you have doubt regarding anything, there's a difference between what is acceptable in the community worship in public as opposed to what you do in your own home. I know some people who go ahead.
Would the prohibition of playing instruments on Shabbat in general also be a gezerah because it's to prevent us from repairing the instrument if it breaks?
That's right. That's right.
Or tuning.
I'm reading a book, and I was shocked to see that it mentions there, and the Sephardim customs, I guess, it was to play the organ on the service. And
yeah,
on
you're
Shabbat,
talking about things that most people don't know because it's hush hush. You know, even if somebody knows, they're afraid to mention it. This is a consequence of the so-called ultra-Orthodox mentality, which does not respect the free exchange of sincere ideas. It's a huge problem. But yes, there is
because I
precedent.
said so takes precedent.
Yeah, because my rabbi has greater authority than the Sanhedrin or equal authority is a big, big problem. There is precedent before the Reform movement. It's not just a Reform idea. There's precedent for a lot of things that the Reform movement does that now everybody thinks, oh, it's just Reform. But if we investigate, we'll find there's actually precedent for some of these things long before the Reform movement. Yes, sir?
Yeah, this particular note that I'm reading, I think it was way before the Reform movement took place in Europe or
some would hire
the Middle East,
non-Jews play music on Shabbat for them to enhance the atmosphere. And if you understand the reasoning behind this restriction on playing music on Shabbat, it is clear that the restriction was not because there was anything inherently problematic with music on Shabbat. I mean, that should be clear to anybody who actually reads Tanakh, who reads the Bible. It talks about praising Hashem with all these instruments in the Psalms, in the last Psalm, which everybody should know in the religious Jewish world. So why do we never see it? You know, there's no prohibition that you can't do it during the weekday. Why do we never do it during the weekday? It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's also indication in the Bible that they play these instruments in the Beit HaMikdash on the holidays, on the Hagim. There is no inherent evil or inherent violation of any principle of the Torah to play an instrument on Shabbat. The concern is purely whether doing so may likely lead to a severe violation of the Torah. When you enter into a reality or a circumstance where that serious concern for violation of Torah does not exist, there is legitimate room for questioning whether that gzerah even applies. And if you have doubt with regard to a rabbinic law, you know the general principle. You know the principle. But you don't do what you know may be permitted or even reasonable. You don't do it in a case where you know it's not going to be worth it. So you respect the community where you live, but that doesn't mean you have to agree with everything. It doesn't mean you have to do everything that they do, even when you're in the privacy of your own home, or even when you're in a new community that has no established custom. And we see precedent for this throughout the Talmud, throughout the text of the Talmud, and post-Talmudic literature as well, long before the Reform movement. And this is certainly not a condoning of the Reform movement, of those principles of the Reform movement that conflict with the covenant of Torah. But something is not bad just because Reform Jews do it. If a Reform community is taking care of the poor of their town, which certainly takes place in different Reform communities, but a certain Orthodox community is not doing it, that doesn't mean that it's bad to take care of the poor in your community just because the Reform are doing it. It's like the idea that it's forbidden to bow before God in an act of sincere worship just because Muslims prostrate to God. It's ridiculous. Were pagans not bowing to their idols throughout the biblical era, during which we were bowing to God as well? Do we think we're smarter than our prophets and sages who were alive at that time, who knew full well that the pagans were bowing to the idols, yet they never made a prohibition against bowing? But yet some anonymous, because we don't even know who it was, and we don't even know if they actually existed, but the popular sentiment in the Orthodox establishment today is we don't bow because Muslims started bowing, so now we don't do it. And we don't even know who came up with this enactment. Like, it's not recorded anywhere. Maybe it used to be recorded, but it's not preserved. But yeah, we're going
Daniel
to
3.
abandon. Say what?
Daniel 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego
But yeah,
were told to bow to the idol.
Well,
yeah. But
if
yet
you
they were.
also,
But yet Daniel was still falling upon his knees and bowing to God in the same book.
Right. Right.
It's
if you
In
look,
other words, the pagans were doing it. Doesn't mean that we don't do
it's
it.
obvious.
Yeah. Right.
It's there,
Yeah.
it's like the same concept of the priest. If you look in the Torah, it says that the Egyptian priests didn't work. Everything was provided to them. In a sense, in the Torah, it takes the same idea and applies it to
Absolutely.
the Levites.
And they do it
You
to
know,
the kollel system, where
yeah.
men will learn Torah their whole lives, all day long. They don't have any other occupation, and the community provides for them. Oh, why aren't we concerned about copying the practice of the pagans when it comes to that? What do they say? What do they say?
Money talks.
Money talks and BS walks. You know? That's why.
Mm.
But when it comes to reviving an ancient biblically mandated practice, but it may cause some pushback in your community and you might lose your kollel money. Suddenly, we'll make a mountain out of an anthill. But when it comes to being similar to idolaters with regard to other matters that you happen to conform to, oh, heaven forbid you should even ask the question. It's not. This is not Torah. This is intellectual dishonesty. On the on on the backs of the masses of the Jewish people who find Torah, or rather Torah as it's presented by the establishment, simply unattractive. Not because they're evil. The majority of the Jewish people who are not very observant are not evil. They just don't find it attractive or convincing to the country. They find it an embarrassment. And that is not Torah. God says in the Torah that when we keep his covenant, when we keep it as he has commanded it, it will draw people to us in admiration, not mocking us. That means we need to, it's not that we need to just do everything that the more secular streams of the Jewish people do. I'm not saying that at all. Heaven forbid. But what I am saying is, if we're doing things properly, our reality would be different. So, seeing that it's not as God says that it would be when we keep His covenant, we should have this should be cause for pause and make us scratch our heads and ask, what are we doing that may be leading to a misalignment between the reality we see and what God says in the Torah would be if we keep His covenant. Clearly, something's not matching, something's not lining up. So we need to think about it and act, not just wait around, for some miracle to happen. The miracle will be when we finally act, when we finally have enough faith in Hashem and enough surrender to Him that we are willing to suffer potential social consequences for standing up for what we know is right, for the covenant, for the sake of His name, and for the deliverance of the whole house of Israel, and not just tiny little insular enclaves that, will never ask these questions. Never. The time is now. Et la'asot Hashem. Et la'asot Hashem. It is a time to act for God. Eferu Toratecha. They have loosened your Torah. And some read it. You can read it, and this is in the Talmudic literature. Change the vowels, but keep the letters. Eferu Toratecha. That means not just that we should do something different because they have loosened your Torah, Hashem. They're making the fabric of the covenant fall apart. But you can also read it, loosen your Torah, not God's Torah. Loosen the Torah that you have concocted and re-examine it. See where there's a breach in God's Torah because we have become too tight with our Torah, what we have turned God's Torah into. Et la'asot Hashem. It is a time to act for Hashem. Any other questions before we move on? On that note, we will go ahead and say our concluding prayer if there's no questions to be added. Would you go ahead?
Do you think we have a time to read a little bit more?
I don't mind, whatever you guys think.
Because chapter 5 is pretty short. So I thought maybe we'd get that done, and then chapter 6 is pretty long, so it might take us
let's do it.
a session or two.
Yalla. Can you give me 3 minutes?
Yeah.
All right. The Mishnah Road.
We'll take a quick break and see you in 5.
Text meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yours. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The oral Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah walk, we're all aware. A Mishnah walk, a road of discovery. Where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yours. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages, we find our way on the Mishnah walk every single day. Mishnah walk every single day. The Mishnah walk every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery. Where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yours. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah walk, we're all aware. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages we find our way. On the Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, every single day. The Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah walk, we're all aware. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages we find our way. On the Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, every single day. The Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah walk, we're all aware. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages we find our way. On the Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, every single day. The Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Mishnah walk, wisdom is yours. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah walk, we're all aware. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yours. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages we find our way. On the Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, every single day. The Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yours. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yours. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah.
Shalom
Okay.
Aleichem.
We are back.
Birkat Hashem Aleichem.
What measurement of drink was that? Was that a
That was possibly a Revi'it.
like at least look like a double?
Yalla, yalla. Chapter 5 of the Rambam's introduction to his commentary to the Mishnah, the earliest and most authoritative codification of the oral traditions. Yes, sir.
I'm so glad that Hodiah asked us to continue, because this is a huge point right here we need to make.
You want to read it?
I will start out, sure.
All right. B'chavod.
Chapter 5, the system of the Mishnah, why dissensions and retractions were recorded. A, disputes settled by final vote before the Mishnah was written. Rabbi Yehuda found it necessary to record the opinion of both sides of each past dispute, even when the law had been decided according to only one of them by a final vote. This was because if only the final decisions were recorded, omitting the words of the sages whose opinions were not accepted in the outcome, then if someone would have come to us and state a view opposing one recorded, which he actually merely received from the sages who had originally held it before the matter was voted on, or from one who inclined toward that position, we would have found ourselves in a dilemma, wondering, how could this man, and he is a trustworthy person, receive a teaching from a certain thing is forbidden?
That is forbidden.
Thank you. While the Mishnah says it is permitted. And on the other hand, he would wonder, how can it be that the Mishnah says it is permitted when this reliable man maintains he has received the teaching that it is forbidden? However, now that we have permanent records of these divergent opinions, this apprehension will not arise, at least not in Jewish camps.
Right. Important distinction.
Yeah, that's why it's so important. Let's see.
Right here.
How I'm looking on my sheet. Sorry, where are we at? What did you say?
However, now that we have permanent records of these divergent opinions, this apprehension will not arise. For if someone should state, I have heard from an authority that such and such is prohibited, when we know that the law we practice permits it, we can now tell him with certainty, you are correct. What you have learned was indeed the opinion of Rabbi XYZ, but the majority of authorities differed with him, or so-and-so differed with him, but the final law is decided according to his opinion, either because his theorem is logically superior, or because we found an authoritative source supporting his opinion. See Eduyot, Tractate Eduyot, Witnesses 1, Mishnah 6. Odaya, Tur Shalach, your turn.
B. Disputes unsettled by the time of the writing of the Mishnah. But the reason he felt obliged to chronicle the words of an individual together with those of the majority is that the final law may have eventually been decided in accordance with the individual against that majority. Consequently, the recording of such dissensions now demonstrates to us that if a sequence of logic is clear, even if it is only in individuals, we should listen to it, and even if a large number of people differs.
Right, and this is only talking about questions with which no definitive answer had been received from Moses or explicit in the text of the Torah. So you could have details regarding how to apply certain laws of the Torah, details that are not clear in the text of the Torah itself, details for which no halacha is received from Moses or from the earlier sages. And so it's unclear. We have no authoritative decision how we apply commandment XYZ in a given scenario. So there's room for debate with regard to matters such as that. Can any of you guys give an example of such a thing? I can certainly, but I'll wait for you. Oh, Victor disappeared. Can you hear us? I don't know if Victor's still with us.
I wonder if his power went out again.
Huh.
I don't know. We'll see.
Gonna miss such a topic. I'm sure he would enjoy. I'm picking with him, and he's not even here. That's not right. So I'll give an example. The Torah does not discuss, as we earlier mentioned, electricity. Excuse me. Yeah. Victor, did you hear the question?
My internet dropped. I was gone about 60 seconds.
We'll look at
what
it
was the
again.
question? Mhm.
So, in relation to another reason for which dissenting opinions are given, and cases in which the opinion of one individual is still recorded,
The
because
minority opinion.
even though it's a minority opinion, but the ruling, a definitive authoritative ruling had not yet been given, so that minority opinion may actually turn out to become the authoritative opinion. And that way, because in the merit of it being recorded in the Mishnah, we know that this was, like, it adds strength to what later becomes the final ruling, because we see, we have a basis in the opinions of our sages, albeit a minority opinion, that now the judges of our current generation have deliberated upon and concluded that that minority opinion was correct. Right. So this is with regard to things that were either not decided by past courts, or there were new factors that past courts did not know about, had not asked about or deliberated on. So that minority opinion can add weight to arguments with regard to a new question and new deliberations. So the question was, can we think of anything that may be an example of this in modern times? We mentioned one earlier.
Biblically, none are jumping into my head. I'm just thinking
application of biblical
here.
law.
Yeah.
You know, application of biblical law, but we're not sure what it is because the text of the Torah itself isn't explicit, and the writings of our sages are not definitive. So electricity is one.
Driving.
Electricity
cars.
on Shabbat. And so you could say all proactive use of electricity on Shabbat is forbidden from the Torah. Or you could say It's not forbidden from the Torah to use it on Shabbat as long as you're not tampering with it on Shabbat. Maybe you can benefit from it as long as it's from before Shabbat. You could also say that it's not forbidden at all, even to mess with it on Shabbat. You could adjust or manipulate electricity on Shabbat itself, and it's not a prohibition from the Torah at all. You could have another opinion that says it may or may not be, depending on how you use it, how you use electricity on Shabbat. So there's different ways you could view it. There may be other opinions as well. I'm just not thinking of at the moment. But this is something that the sages of the Talmud did not deliberate on. The text of the Torah is not explicit on at all. But it could, and it does in the religious Jewish world today. It is a question of a violation of Torah, of a Torah commandment, not just a rabbinic commandment. That is the way the question is framed. So you could have an opinion of Rabbi XYZ that can lend strength to a certain argument. And that is the case with regard to this. You could say, is it fire? Is all usage of electricity fire just because some usages of electricity create light and light is similar to fire? Well, I could bring up the opinion, which is the accepted halacha, by the way, that cooking by means of sunlight is not regarded by our sages as the cooking which is prohibited from the Torah, because they did not consider the sun to have the status of fire, even though it makes light. It's just one example. That doesn't mean this opinion, if this, then this, is inherently authoritative, but you can see how it lends weight, even though it wasn't a question, the question of electricity, even though it wasn't dealt with in the text. But you can use an opinion from the text and apply it in other questions. Another one is the question of intersex people who are born with some anomaly in their genitalia or some ambiguity, whether they are male or female, and how should they be related to? How do certain laws apply to them? The Torah doesn't talk about this, at least not explicitly. I am aware of one commandment in the Torah where one of the sages of the Talmud do give an opinion and tie it as a reference. In their opinion, it was an explicit reference to an intersex person. I only know of one opinion. There might be others, but I've never encountered them. But that's too complicated to get into right now. But I can tell you, though, that rabbi's opinion in the Talmud, which he understood as a reference to an intersex person, 99.9% of people in the Orthodox world today have no idea that it's there because they just gloss over it, the same way that many Christians just read right over the verses in the Bible where it says the covenant is for all generations. Like if you already have a preconceived idea, it is so easy to just fly over something and it's like it's not even there, even though it's screaming right in your face. But anyway, that's another example where a minority opinion may actually come in handy with regard to dealing with future questions that were not explicitly dealt with in the past, or new factors arise that we didn't know were relevant back then, but now because of science, we now know more than they used to know. Yes, ma'am.
How about glass, plastic, and stainless steel dishes?
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. And the question of permeability of flavor from unkosher foods and how that's relevant to how many sets of dishes you should or may not need to have. Excellent. Or with regard to the question of necessity of immersing dishes when you've acquired new dishes. Your turn.
I think we just read this one, didn't we?
Did we read the whole thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead and read it again, if you don't mind.
B, disputes unsettled by time of the writing of the Mishnah. But the reason that he felt obliged to chronicle the words of an individual together with those of the majority is that the final law may eventually have been decided in accordance with the individual against that majority. Consequently, the recording of such dissensions now demonstrates to us that if a sequence of logic is clear, even if it is only in individuals, we should listen to it, and even if a large number of people differs.
We don't turn our heads away from recognizing reality when new realities present themselves, when new facts present themselves that perhaps we were lacking that information before. See, the reason he felt obliged to record the original opinion of an authority as well as his retraction and final opinion, for example, Beit Shammai said this and Beit Hillel said this and that, but Beit Hillel retracted and instead taught what was originally just Beit Shammai's opinion and then was adopted by Beit Hillel, as we find in Tractate Eduyot 1, Mishnah 2. This was to make their love for truth known to you and to fortify righteousness and honesty. For each of these glorious, pious, noble men, outstanding in wisdom, upon realizing that his intellectual opponent's opinions and methods of analysis were superior to his, acknowledged the fact and retracted his formal positions. Certainly, other men, upon seeing the truth inclining towards others disagreeing with them, should likewise incline towards the truth and should not be adamant in their original opinion once they understand that their original opinion does not hold up to the same measure as his previous dissenter's opinion. This is the meaning of the verse in Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 16. Righteousness pursue, upon which the sages commanded, acknowledge the truth when it's presented with you. When you recognize it, acknowledge it. Won't demand that the truth be ignored or manipulated to conform with your pre-existing conviction, but rather the other way around. Your conviction needs to conform to truth once you recognize it. Though you are capable of defending yourself through skillful debate, when you know that the words of your opponent, who considers your argument correct because of his intellectual weakness, or because you are able to convince him through confusion, when you see that his words are more correct, retract your opinion and accept his, and abandon the argument. This is beautiful.
That is.
Some people simply have a better skill of argumentation, and they may even know that they are able to engage in spin and make a weak opinion look strong, or make a stronger opinion look weak due to sophistry, due to their mastery of the use of words and the different connotations, double meanings of certain words. They can confuse someone. The Torah is telling us to not do this, that you are held accountable. God holds you accountable to your conscience and to your recognition of truth, even if you don't need to expose it. But if you know it, you have to acknowledge it and acknowledge the superiority of your dissenter once you recognize the truth in his words and the weakness in your own. And that's it, huh? I believe so. All right. In the meantime, until next time. So let's continue with our concluding prayer of gratitude. הודיה בכבוד.
Modeh ani lefanecha Adonai Elohai. I am grateful before you, O Eternal, the powerful authority over me. Shesamta helki miyoshvei Beth Hamidrash. That you have placed my portion among those who dwell in the house of study. How far do you want me to go?
Keep doing it. You're on a roll.
Okay. Walo samta helki miyoshvei koronoth. And that you have not placed my portion among those who dwell on street corners. She'ani mashkim wahem mashkimim. I get up early and they get up early. Ani mashkim lidvrei Torah. Ledivrei Torah. I get up early to matters of Torah. Wahem mashkimim lidvarim batalim. And they get up to empty matters. אני עמל והם עמלים. I work hard and they work hard. אני עמל ומקבל שכר. I work hard and receive reward. והם עמלים ואין מקבלים שכר. They work hard and do not receive reward. אני רוס והם רוסים. I run and they run. אני רוס לחיי העולם הבא. I run unto the life to come. והם רוצים לבאר שחף. And they run unto a pit of destruction.
All right. Mr. Victor, we want to conclude with a personal word of prayer for the entirety of the United States, the mental and spiritual health of the society in which we live and of the broader Western world, humanity in general.
Hashem, Master, we thank you for your light in our land, your word, and lift up the world to you, our nation right now, as it grieves with the loss of Charlie Cook, his life being taken away, and we pray your peace be upon his family, his wife, and children, as the world analyzes and moves in large ways around the world. We see everyone's saying they're Charlie Kirk today, and that we would turn away from violence from Hamas and toward honest dialogue, as we read some of those rules today as being relevant, that we parse things correctly and not allow the dark ways of taking over what truth is bringing us. Ask that you would give us a great week, and that we would continue to honor you. And all of God's children said,
Amen.
Amen.
Baruch. כל הכבוד. תזכו למצוות. תודה רבה. שיהיה לכם שבוע טוב, שבוע מבורך. שבוע של תשובה, a week of repentance and of rejuvenation.